What's up, everybody? Um, Super excited to be here at Silicon Slopes, and I'm stoked that they're doing this marketing summit. And to be a part of this as in the creative session is super. I'm honored. But yeah, thanks for showing up. Appreciate you guys coming. And yeah, so about me, I've worked at various agencies in my time. But I wanted to really talk about a little bit of my journey and just the advice that I've learned along the way. I'm definitely nobody special. I'm not like the CMO or the CCO of any place, but I do talk and interact with our chief suites at the Jazz, and I'm able to relay, from the trenches, kind of what I think we should do and how we should change things and whatnot. And sometimes they listen, and most of the time they don't. But it's fun, and so hence why I wanted to really title this, Creative Advice from the Weeds, because that's where I live day to day. I'm in the weeds with creativity, and I figured the best way to talk about that is kind of the journey that I've been on. So if you'll go with me a little bit on where I've been. So I went to BYU. I'm a product of the BYU ad program. And I first then went to Leo Burnett in Chicago, did an internship there, as well as some freelance work, worked on the Mayhem Allstate campaign, helped launch Mayhem on Twitter, which was super fun. Then I came back to Salt Lake and worked here locally at Struck. Got to touch Utah Tourism, Nickelodeon, Sinclair Gasoline, Jack in the Box, and working on the creative for some of those clients. Went back to Chicago because I wanted to go back to Chicago. Moved our family out there. Worked at BBDO where I was able to, he talked about it, yeah, Avocados from Mexico, Orbit, some other fun campaigns, and then have ended up back here in Salt Lake, ping pong at the Utah Jazz. And but before I can really get into that, I have to start at the beginning, cliche as it is. I'm from Rigby, Idaho. Birthplace of the television. And these three individuals are very special to me. This is my grandpa, my dad, and my brother. And what they have in common, besides being family, is they're all dentists. So I come from a line of dentists. There was, did you brush your teeth, floss? Like that was a daily discussion in our household, and creative was not one of them. I had no idea that you could do creativity as a job, which was super fun and exciting to learn. And so I'm kind of this creative trailblazer in my family. And it's been a ride. But luckily my family recognized something in me really early on, that I was a little different and I had some creativity to me, and they helped nourish that. This is actually, I won a contest for this photo. My parents did, I guess. And so this was the first award I ever won, being creative, at age 2, which was super fun. But one of my earliest memories was my parents providing me with this tracing monster book. And I loved illustration. That was something that I enjoyed. I wasn't great at it, but I wanted to get better at it. And so I would trace these monsters over and over and over again. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was learning a really important principle for creativity, which is to copy other people. That is how you learn. That's the best way to really learn the fundamentals, the basics of how this works. And too often we say, I've got to be this original thinker. Like I have to come up with these ideas. I have to be this genius. And to that I say, okay, eventually, sure. But learning from others is the best way to really break into the creative world. And that's kind of, I guess, the motto of this talk. I'm hoping to speak to the young creatives in the room, the young at heart creatives in the room who maybe need to hear this again. Or maybe you're not in the creative field, but you interact with creatives on a daily basis, or maybe you manage creatives. My hope is that some of what I have to say will help you speak a little bit of the same language with them and hopefully relate a little bit more, and that you learn something. But a book that I was given really early on in my career was Still Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. highly recommend reading that. And he just talks about, this misconception of original thinking, that you need to steal like an artist, really, to become better. That's the best way to learn. And that taste and creativity, it's a muscle. And just like any time you're starting out at the beginning of the year, because you have these lofty goals to get back into the gym, you have to work those muscles out. You have to continue to work at them. And I've seen that in my career of, coming from Rigby, Idaho, with dentistry as a reference, of this is what good design looks like. Like, it was terrible. Like, I didn't have good references to pull from. But learning from those around me throughout my career has just been such a cool thing. And I did learn it. Like, it has gotten better over time. My wife will joke about my plaid shorts and sideburns, not too long ago. And so luckily I've improved. I've gotten better taste. But I loved what Dave Grohl, from the Foo Fighters or Nirvana said when he was talking with Pharrell. And he talks about this, really what's in this book, Still Like an Artist.
I was decent. I wasn't like your level. Like,
Dude, stop saying I'm a good drummer because I'm the most basic fucking drummer. If you listen to Nevermind, the Nirvana record, I pulled so much stuff from the Gap Band and Cameo and Tony Thompson on every one of those songs. All that. It's old disco. That's all it is.
can I not hear that?
Nobody makes the connection.
That's straight up Gap Band.
I told Tony Thompson that. Came to my house for a barbecue with somebody, and I was like, man, I just want to thank you because, I owe so much. I've been ripping you off my whole life. He goes, I know.
Whoa.
I love that, having two musicians that are greats in our world right now talking about their influences and stealing, ripping people off. Like, that's how you do it. That's how we have to learn. And eventually we will learn the tools and be able to figure it out and make it our own. But you have to start by ripping people off. Just do it tastefully. And that's why you have hopefully good directors, creative directors that help you, guide you. But Austin Kleon says this. He says, you don't get to pick your family, but you get to pick your teachers. You get to pick your friends, the music you listen to, the movies that you watch, and the books that you read. You are, in fact, the mashup of what you choose to let into your life. You are the sum of your influences. And that's been so true in my life of, just the different things that I've been able to pull from. And it's gotten me to where I am today because of the people that have been around me. And you can't just be a hoarder of whatever, like let the algorithm just serve you up anything. You need to be a selective curator of those things that you're going to allow to influence you. And I can tell you I had really bad taste early on, and I let the wrong things influence me. And there's definitely bumps in the road when it comes to that, but that's what creativity is. It's figuring out the influences that are going to make you better, and then how you're going to put that out in the world. And to talk about some of those bad influences for me, one of the first ones was the movie Jackass, or the TV show Jackass, MTV. There wasn't a lot to do in Rigby, Idaho, and so what we did was we would jump off shit and break bones and then film it all. Like that's what we did. Johnny Knoxville, I haven't met him, but I'd love to someday. That'd be fun. But that's what we were doing, and I didn't realize it either, but we were learning the basics of videography and storytelling. They were terrible stories, but it was storytelling. How to use a camera, composition, editing. These were the things that I was learning early on, and I didn't realize that this was going to project me on this path of being a creative director at the Utah Jazz, which was really cool. My parents thought I was wasting my time, but it paid off. And that all came to life really when I went to BYU, and I met this kid in the library. His name was John D. And he told me he wanted to go film people going off this bike jump in Alpine. And I was like, cool, I'll do that. Sounds fun. And keep in mind, I hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do at this point. But he brought a camera, and this was right when DSLRs were really coming into everybody's hands, and quality of video was becoming more accessible. And he filmed us going off this bike jump, and it was one of the coolest videos at that point that I was like, wow, like even this guy that I met in the library could make something Hollywood quality, right? At least at that point, I felt like it was Hollywood quality. And so I was like, something sparked in me, and I said, I want to do that. And luckily, to get into the BYU program, you have to make a video. And I had this dumb idea of, this cool thing that I saw from an Allstate commercial. And I was like, hey, what if I wrote this and you could help me film it? And he was like, well, we can't do that because that's a really expensive way to do it, but I think we can fake it in After Effects. And so that's what we did. He helped me make this video, and it impressed the professors enough that I got into the program. And it actually ended up impressing BYU football, and they were like, hey, we want to hire you to come make creative content for us because we need better videos for recruiting purposes. And we helped launch their YouTube channel. This was like 2010, 2011. And so I got to learn how to start making video and get paid to do it while being in sports and while being in advertising over here and sports over here. And that was super fun. It was a fun part of my career. But one of the main things that I learned at BYU that really helped shape the way that I look at my job now and even in the past was that it was in Doug McKinley's advertising 101 or 230 class. I can't remember which one it was, but he talked about being T-shaped. You guys are probably familiar with this, but this is something that I tell a lot of students even now is just this importance of being T-shaped. And what that is you have your horizontal bar up top, and it's this knowledge across many different fields that you can pull from, the reference. And then you have your vertical bar, which is knowledge in a more specific field. And so for me, kind of what that looks like is, I did construction growing up, snowboarding, sports, coding, I did theater randomly for a summer one time. And it's just these references that I can pull from throughout when I get a brief or whatever it is, right? And then my vertical bar is really what I've studied and what I've kind of steered my whole life at when it comes to motion graphics, video, commercials, editing, script writing, storytelling. And the hope is that each of these will start to get a little wider and, longer throughout your life. This vertical bar is actually what helped me land my first full-time gig at Struck. We were working on Utah tourism campaigns, and there was other interns that were also pitching in ideas, just like all of us were doing. But because I had this motion graphics, experience, I stood out, and I was able to, take this Ski Utah campaign and animate it in After Effects, and they were like, "Cool, we're hiring this guy." And so that helped me stand out. And so, as these young creatives are coming into the world right now, the temptation is to just be a jack of all trades with all these different things and to make your horizontal bar almost look like your vertical bar. But I would say the more and more you can be specialized and really own one thing, the more you're going to stand out from your competition. At least that's just how it was for my experience. And now, managing creatives, I'd say like the more that you can allow your creative employees to flourish in their vertical bar is super important. That's where you're going to see the best work come from them. That's how it was for me, because we work in such a subjective world, of what is good, what isn't. We're all dealing with imposter syndrome of, am I good enough to be here? I'm not good enough. And the less you can put constraints and negativity and micromanage the way that it should be done and allow people to have the freedom within their vertical bar, the more you're going to see better work. That's been true for my career. It's been true with the people that I've managed. Just seeing, I have this employee right now who wanted to start dabbling in 3D, and it wasn't good, right, early on. But just with encouragement and just saying, you can do this, and not putting a lot of micromanagement of like, oh, this is how you should do it. She's amazing. Like she just did a full campaign that didn't get to see the light of day because we didn't make the playoffs, but it was so cool. Like, and if you go to the game, if you went yesterday, you probably saw it on the Jumbotron. And we'll put stuff out here soon, but it's just cool to see how people can grow the more you can encourage them and not just say, oh, this sucks. Wow, yeah, what are you doing? And that comes with time, but so yeah, they'll surprise you. And then another thing that I learned, was actually from Jason Bagley, the former ECD at White & Kennedy. Early on in his career, he read in a book and he tore out the page. It said, "Genius doesn't exist, just hard work." He put it on his desk, and he actually started out his career here in Salt Lake City. And then he spent 17 years at White & Kennedy, which is one of the most amazing advertising agencies in the world. And he worked on Nike, Old Spice, Coke. Like, he's touched so many different things. And I took a course from him just recently because he started this audacious school of astonishing pursuits. And it's essentially creative continuing education. And so if you're looking for something, I highly recommend that. But him talking about this hard work was so true to me. I'm not this creative genius, and it doesn't just come natural for me. I had to work at it. I had to work harder than the next person. And even him saying that was, affirmation that we can do it. You can do this. And that took me to BBDO, where I was able to work on, Super Bowl campaigns for Avocados for Mexico, $1 million orbit campaigns, and putting in that hard work paid off. And it got me to a place where, starting out was like, this is the top. I've reached the top. I did a Super Bowl commercial. Oh my gosh. But for me, at least, something was out of balance. I wasn't happy. I was looking around saying, man, I'm at the top of my career. This is the best. Like, why am I not happy? But my mental health was taking a dive, and being in Chicago where it's gray 5 months out of the year, seasonal depression was a real thing. And so ultimately I had to ask myself, what did I want? And that was hard because, starting out at BYU, like, you're just supposed to go to these big agencies, win the awards. Like, that's what success looks like. But I had to redefine what success was for me. And for me, it was spending more time with my family and having a better work-life balance. And keep in mind, this was pre-COVID. I think we've all kind of figured this out now after COVID of, working from home and spending more time with our families, of how to reprioritize and what success looks like. But when I started to ask these questions, it ultimately landed me back closer to home. And so it took me to the Utah Jazz. And the Jazz has been super fulfilling. It's been a fun part of my career. I was moving in-house, and it was really interesting noticing the difference between an agency and an in-house shop. And keep in mind, I've only been in-house one place, so I can't speak to how that is for all of you, which I'm sure most of you are in-house or maybe at agencies here too, locally. But for me, I thought that difference was really interesting. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, just agency versus in-house. Agencies have been around actually for hundreds of years. Like, BBDO was founded in 1891, and Leo Burnett was in 1935. Like, they've been around a long time, and so they've figured out the process of how to get to the ultimate goal, which is successful creative campaigns for brands, right? Like, they've had a long time to perfect that. And even the structure, the process of how they set up their business is all for that end goal. And so now, granted, they have the luxury of being able to hire a lot of people to be able to do it, whereas in-house, sometimes a lot of people are wearing multiple hats. And so your strengths ultimately aren't as focused as they could be. Your vertical bar, you might have to grow a few more. But I want to talk about just kind of that supporting structure of an agency, and because that's really what we've tried to do at the Jazz now is adapting and having that be an influence in how we build out our in-house studio or in-house production company. And so, again, I know there's lots of different types of agencies out there. I'm going to talk about full-service creative agencies like BBDO and Leo Burnett. This is how they are somewhat set up. I'm oversimplifying. I know there's a lot more departments to all of this, but I think first and foremost, like, your strategy is super important. You know, your strategists, your planners, your media buyers, like, those are the people out doing the research that ultimately is going to feed the nuggets to the creative department of, hey, here's the areas of opportunity, here's the target audience you should all be pursuing. You know, Orbit, we had some amazing strategists where, you know, Orbit has historically always owned clean mouth feeling, but we had, for whatever reason, kind of gotten away from that at the time, and so we decided to figure out how we could get back to that clean mouth feeling. And the strategists found this area of opportunity with dating. They were like, where's a really dirty thing out in the world? And dating happened to be that at the time. And so it's like, cool, how can Orbit figure out how to put itself in the dating world? You know, Tinder is disgusting, Hinge, you know, like, people are having these gross experiences in the dating world. And so we were like, cool, how can Orbit clean that up? And so we came up with this line, keep it clean, and we launched this campaign with Chris Parnell, where he was kind of this dad figure, and he was going to tell the world, you know, let's clean it up, America. And it was super fun, but that all started with the strategy. And then you have your operations. You know, you have your account managers who are dealing with the clients on a daily basis. They're kind of the liaison between the agency and the client. Most of you guys probably already know this stuff, but just in case you don't. And then your project managers, they're all about timelines and keeping creatives wrangled. Super important job. And then your producers, you know, they work kind of hand in hand with the creative, because we'll come up with these really dumb ideas and then they're like, yeah, that's not in budget, dude. Or they'll go say, yeah, we could do it this way. This is how we can be creative with your idea in executing that. And then your creative department, kind of a breakdown of that, at least at, you know, BBDO and Leo Burnett, was, you know, you had your art director, copywriter, who those are the main people that were coming up with ideas. You have your designers, and then your content creators. And this is changing, right? Like, there's the traditional way of doing it, and I kind of had this background in art direction and content creation, and whatever unique way that your T-shape can get you into this place is worth pursuing. Like, it was fun, because at BBDO, like, I think only one of my bosses was from America. Like, everybody else was either from Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Brazil, or Croatia. Like, there was just such diversity of different people coming and influencing me in all these different avenues, and it was such a cool place to be. But again, these agencies are set up in such a way that it allows you to focus on your strengths. You know, I'm a creative. I'm not going to be in all the same meetings that producers, project managers are in, that are figuring out the logistics. They're supporting us, and the same with strategy. And it was all leading up to this hyper-focused way of putting out good content for these brands, which then moved me to the jazz. And how could we implement that? How can we try and build that type of system for Utah Jazz? And because, you know, Ryan Smith wants amazing content, and, you know, he wants to, he has lofty goals of, you know, we launched SEG Media and Jazz Plus, and we have just this focus on content like never before. When I started at the Jazz, you know, our creative department was less than, it went down to 10 people during COVID, and we've now grown it to 50 people in the full marketing department as of today. And that was because there was this emphasis on content and how to do that. And one of the first hires that I made when I got there was a project manager. It wasn't a creative person. I just said, we need help to how to make sure that I can be good at what I do, and we need these supporting systems to do that. And it's paid off. Like we've seen success in some cool ways, and hopefully you guys have seen some of that stuff out in the world. But we've actually over the past 3 years increased our partnership revenue by 300%, and that's been because we've got new thinking coming to our partners when they come to the Jazz and say, we want to sponsor with you, we want our brands to be working together. It's starting from this creativity, this agency approach of, okay, what's a unique idea that we can bring to this partner and make our two brands work together in a fun way, versus just showing up to the game and your LEDs up there, woohoo. It's a different approach, and the partners are recognizing it, they're feeling it, and it's paying off. And it's a work in progress. Like, we're still hiring different positions that can build this, and by no means are we an agency. I don't think any in-house place really could be, but we're trying to figure it out what works best for us. And an agency, work process has really been influential in that. I'd say like what I've really tried to do as well is just hire differently. When I got there, most of the people that was either their first job or they'd always worked in sports. And I was the first one that came in not from sports, really, for the creative department. And I've tried to hire non-sports people mixed with sports people. And I think there's that synergy, stupid word, of having, sports people and non-sports people, different T-shapes all working together to make these pillars that we then can sit the marketing department on top of. And it's been cool to see all the different influences and references that people are bringing as they come together, similar to what I saw at BBDO, where, this dude in Brazil had this wacky idea I'd never thought of, right? Because he had a whole different experience, a whole different horizontal bar than me. But us coming together produced some amazing ideas. And that's where I think you'll find success is just trying to hire those different T-shapes. And so one of the biggest influences in my life, though, outside of my work, has been with my wife. Janie, she actually works as an art director at a local company called Gimme Beauty. They do hair products. Their bands and hair bands are in Target and Ulta. And seeing her career and how she's helped influence me and make me better has been probably the most influential, I could say. So get a good partner that you can bounce ideas off with, even in the late hours. And so, yeah, that's my shtick, and I hope that you can, relate to a creative person if you're not creative, or that hopefully this advice helps encourage you to keep going and get better, because just keep making that a horizontal bar wider and that vertical bar a little thicker. Thanks. And then I think I'm supposed to say if anybody has questions, go ahead. So if you got questions. Yeah.
You said Tinder was disgusting, but we're a Tinder success story.
We are a Tinder success story, you're right. early Tinder, before it got really nasty. 2015, right? 2012. So. Any other questions? Yeah.
What's your preference in terms of working with lots of different companies, which agencies get to do, versus being hyper-focused on one company and iterating on that company? Do you have a preference there?
It changes daily. I loved my time at an agency for sure. I think what the biggest difference that I've noticed is the layers of approvals that you have to go through at an agency versus an in-house. So as a young creative, I'm pitching my ideas to my CD or my ECD, who then has to pitch it to the CCO, who has to pitch it to the client, who has to pitch it to the board. You have to go through all those layers of approval before you ultimately get to make something. Whereas at an in-house shop, I pitch it to one person, or sometimes it's me as the decision maker, and we get to go make it, right? And so it's just a difference of, I was very focused on ideas always at an agency, And we didn't always get to make those ideas. We'd often hand those off depending on the budget. But if you're a smaller shop, having people that can do things from A to Z, like that was super fun, but it was rare at a big shop. Whereas in-house, you get to make stuff. Like you get to make come up with these ideas and then see them from to the end. So it just kind of changes. What's been fulfilling for me is building a department. I think, at this point, there's only one person that's been there longer than me in my team. And so that's been super fun, is to hire and see the growth of the people that I've hired. So, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
So you mentioned that you're kind of taking a content creation approach at the Jazz, right?
Yeah.
Have you run into any obstacles organizationally to that approach? And if so, how have you overcome those obstacles?
From a content creation standpoint? Yeah, it's hard. I think there's the thought that everybody has a phone and everybody's a creator. And so often anybody will be like, hey, let me tell you my opinion about that, or I could do this, And so selling in like the importance of specialties of, no, this person can't do what we do here currently, or we need to freelance this out because we can't do this. Like that's been the challenge, is to rationalize the spending that sometimes you need to do to hire the right people. But luckily, like I'd say they've recognized the output and the difference of, oh, well, this is really different than what we did 5 years ago. What's different? Like, oh, it's because we have a 3D animator, and yeah, this person has a background in directing and not just holding a camera, right? Like there's a difference, and so
The work speaks for itself, basically.
yeah, the work speaks for itself. Yeah, there's another hand.
Yeah, how big is your creative staff at the Jazz? Is everything done in-house?
Not everything, but I would say 80% of what we do is done in-house. Yeah, our size, like I manage a team of 13 individuals, which is made up of videographers, directors, editors, motion designers, and writer, singular. And yeah, so and then interns to help. And then we have a design department that I work really closely with. Often I'm creative directing the designer, or my counterpart is directing some of my videographers on, oh no, like we got to change this to look like this. The color should be this, So it's very collaborative, which was not the approach before. It was very siloed, and kudos to the leaders that were there, that hired me. Like they were like, well, it looks different on our broadcast versus in-game arena versus social, so like let's bring it all together and make it, cohesive. So yeah, did that answer your question? Okay, cool. Yeah.
Who was harder to pitch these Super Bowl ideas, yourself or the client?
Say that again.
Who was harder to pitch the Super Bowl ideas, yourself or the client?
Who was harder to pitch?
Like, did you have absolute confidence that you guys could pull it off?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, what ended up getting made was probably script 200 of, rounds of reviews. So it was a grind to get to the one that the client said, that's the one, But we definitely believed in everything we were doing. Like, I believed in the first one, even though it sucked. Yeah, like it's a grind, and that's how agencies are. And I put in a lot of hours. I think we did 5 new business pitches in 3 months at BBDO, which, if you've done a new business pitch, is insane. And that's why I got burned out. So that's why I ultimately left. But I wouldn't replace that experience. Like, I learned a ton. And I tell young creatives, like, go to an agency starting out. You're going to learn a ton. It's going to make you that much more valuable when you want to jump to an in-house place or wherever you want to end up. Like, at least go spend 2 years there, figure it out, and if you hate it, cool. If you want to stay, like some people have made it, they do it, and it's cool. So, to each their own. Any other questions?
First of all, congrats on that fun and creative, impressive career.
Thanks.
Super fun. As a brand developer working with your wife, I'm just curious, is the goal from your perspective to build out basically a creative agency in-house if you have budget over time? Is that the end all? Because you're describing like I have to choose one, but if I could have in-house and have all the resources, is that kind of the target?
For me, yeah, that's what I want to try to do with the jazz. I don't know if leadership's on board with that, and the investment that takes. Because it's harder to hire the right people in-house. Like the benefit of an agency is they kind of have this prestige, right? And so you naturally get more talented people that want to go to an agency, but COVID changed that, and more people are going freelance or they're going in-house than ever before. And so it just kind of depends, like it's just about getting the right leadership in place at an in-house place to then hire correctly. Because it's hard. It's harder doing it in-house, and agencies can be expensive, but it can also benefit you because you can fire them at any time if you want, and you don't have to deal with, layoffs and that hard thing when it comes to in-house. So I totally get that. But my preference would, I think I've loved this structure of doing things in-house and kind of picking and choosing, and it's been fun. So, anything else? Sweet, no Jersey questions. Thanks, guys.